Greetings, I'm Professor K, and in this short video presentation, we're going to take a look at how we go about completing the JB Learning Lab 03, configuring a pfSense firewall. So I've already started the lab, and for this demonstration, I'm going to have to go through Section 1, hands-on demonstration, as well as Section 2, applied learning. And so let's go ahead and get started with Part 1 of Section 1, the hands-on demonstration. Step 1. On your local computer, create the lab report file. The lab report file is just a blank Word document that you're going to create, and you're going to insert images and other information as you are prompted to do so when it comes your turn to complete the lab in Section 2 of this particular lab. Moving on to Part 1. On the workstation desktop, drag the pfSense-fw-planner file to the file transfer folder to download the file to your local machine. It's real simple. Just grab it, drag it on down here to the file transfer. It's going to pop up and give you the option to either open it or to save it. Go ahead and save it to your local machine. I saved mine to my documents folder. You can save yours wherever you want. Just remember where you saved it. You will use this spreadsheet on your local computer to document the desired configuration for the firewall you will configure in Part 2 of this lab. For this section of the lab, the configuration details will be provided for you. On your local computer, open the pfSense-fw-planner file. I have mine open down here. Let's go ahead and open it. Now you will have to enable editing. You're going to see a yellow bar going across the top of the page. If you want to type into this Excel spreadsheet, you will have to enable editing. The first item on the physical configuration worksheet is hostname. A hostname is the unique name of the computer on the network, capable of originating or responding to an interaction using the Internet Protocol. In the settings column on the hostname row, type your name. Now, it doesn't mean to type your name literally. You will type in your given name. I'm going to go ahead and bring up my Excel spreadsheet here, and we'll go into the physical configuration portion of this item. And here we're going to type in the host name that I'm going to use for this configuration. You can type in anything you want. I'm going to type in C. Cranebill, like so. In the comments column of the host name row, type today's date to record the date the configuration was recorded. I'm going to type in 9/17/2021. In the settings column of the domain row, type local to indicate that this is the local firewall. Here's the item domain. Go over here to the settings column, type in local. In the comments column of the next two fields, primary DNS server and secondary DNS server, type override DNS. Over here in the comments field for primary DNS, I will type in override DNS, and I will copy that, and I will paste it into the secondary DNS comment field. In the settings column of the time server URL, type, I'll go ahead and talk while I type here, 0.pfSense.pool.ntp.org. In the settings column of the time zone row, type UTC to document the use of universal coordinated time. So back on over here on our physical configuration, I'm going to type in UTC. Step number 9. In the settings columns of the WAN interface row, type static. Back on over here on our worksheet, I will type in static next to WAN interface. In the comments column of the WAN interface, type the following IP address: 10.20.1.1/24. In step number 11, in the settings column of the MAC address row, leave the cell blank. And it tells you that in this lab environment, there's no interface that will require a MAC address. If required by your network configuration, you would type the source MAC address in the settings column. Step number 12. In the settings column of the MTU maximum transmission unit, row, type default to accept the default value assigned by the Firewall wizard. In the settings column of the IP address row, you're going to type 10.20.1.1. Let's go ahead and do that real quick. That will specify the IP address. Now we're going to type IP version 4 in the comment column. In the settings column of the subnet mask row, type '24 and explains why this is needed. Excel requires the apostrophe to properly format the 24 entry as a character and not a formula. The 24 entry indicates the classless interdomain routing CIDR domain mask. So I'll put the apostrophe and I'll type in 24. Now normally if I was going to annotate this as a subnet, I could also do it as 255.255.255.0. Step number 16. In the comments column of the upstream gateway row, type not required. Make no changes to the DHCP hostname now, since the network is configured for a static connection. Step number 18. Make no changes to the rows related to point-to-point protocol over Ethernet. Step number 19. Make no changes to the rows related to point-to-point tunneling protocol. Step 20. In the settings column of the block RFC 1918 networks row, type do not block. On our worksheet, that is item number 28. So over here in the comments, I will type in do not block. In the settings column of the block Bogan networks, type do not block. Step number 22. Make no changes to the LAN IP address and subnet mask rows. The pfSense Firewall Setup Wizard will automatically populate these fields. Step number 23. In the settings column of the admin password, you're going to type in a new password. Capital P, ampersand, lowercase ss, 9999. Now the reason it's important to change the password on any device that is connected to your network is because that all devices that are sent from the factory from an original equipment manufacturer leave with the default username and password. So as a pen tester or as a hacker, I can go to the internet and I can get the list of all default username and passwords for all devices from all manufacturers, and I can just click on any of these and you're going to give me the list of all the different devices. And down here we are also given the default IP address. So the machine is configured with a default IP address, and if you reset your network adapter on your local machine and you connect to that device, you're going to be able to communicate, bring up the web page just by typing in this IP address. You'll be able to log in with admin and admin. From the bottom of the pfSense FW Planner worksheet, click the Firewall Rules tab and open the Firewall Rules worksheet. Step number 25. Compare the headings in the Firewall Rules worksheet with the following table. Each field in the worksheet is described in this table. You will need this information to complete the Firewall Rules configuration. So get familiar with this table so that you understand exactly what each one of these columns and rows does. Step number 26. In column R of the Firewall Rules worksheet, type Internet browsing. That would be over here. This is column R. I will type in Internet browsing. We will next create a rule to allow browsing of the internet according to the following definition. So I've moved my firewall columns all the way over to the left so that I have access starting with column A. Number 27, in column A of the Firewall Rules worksheet, type pass. Number 28, in column C, type LAN. In column D, type TCP. In column L, type any. In column O through P, type HTTP. Step number 34. Repeat steps 27 to 33 to create the following rule descriptions. If necessary, use the following tables to determine which adjustments to make. So we are to allow email to and from anyone and specify the port range as the one used by the Simple Mail Transfer Protocol SMTP, and allow FTP so that users can send files back and forth. We're also to allow domain name services DNS so that users can type URLs and resolve those to an IP address instead of having to type in the IP address. And we're also going to allow ICMP so that we can ping. So let's start off with SMTP. For the action, we're going to pass. We'll be using the LAN interface. We'll be using IP version 4. Protocol will remain TCP. And we'll do an any. And that's going to go into column G and column L. Roll over a little bit. Now the protocol for this one is going to be SMTP. And we're going to have email access. Scroll on back over. Now we're going to do another one for FTP. Again, we're going to be using the LAN interface. Again, we'll be using IP version 4. And for this protocol, we will also be using TCP. And again, we'll be using any for columns G and L. Scroll on over. This is going to be FTP. And we're going to be doing file transfer protocol. The next one is to allow DNS. Scroll on back over. Again, let's do another pass. LAN interface. IP version 4. Protocol will be TCP. Type will be any. And then again, for column L, any. Type in DNS. And we'll type in DNS. Finally, we have ICMP. Again, we'll do a pass. Again, we'll be using the LAN interface. IP version 4. Protocol is going to be ICMP. Any. For columns G and L. For the port range, we'll type in ICMP. And again, ICMP. And we'll make a comment for ICMP. And so that concludes part 1 of section 1, the hands-on demonstration. We're now going to move on to part 2. We're now going to apply those configuration changes that we put into the worksheet to the pfSense firewall. Scroll on down here to step number 1. On the workstation desktop, double-click the Connections folder. Step number 2, in the Connections folder, double-click the pfSense shortcut. Step number 3, maximize the browser window. Step number 4, in the PFC login screen, double-click the username box to produce a prompt showing the last username used in the application. Go ahead and select admin. Notice that the password fills in automatically. From the username prompt, click the admin option to accept the username and populate the password box. Done. At the pfSense login screen, click Login. Step number 7. From the pfSense menu bar, click System and select Setup Wizard. Find the menu bar right up here. Scroll on down till we come to System and select Setup Wizard. From the context menu, I will click on Setup Wizard. Click the Next button. And on the next screen, click the Next button one more time. On the General Information page, you will use the information that we put into the column of the Physical Configuration Worksheet to complete the fields on the pfSense Firewall Setup Wizard. Let's go ahead and bring that back up real quick. Let's go to the Physical Configuration. And this is where we're going to get all the information we need to configure the firewall. Step number 9, in the hostname box, type your name. So I'm going to go ahead and type in that username I want to use for this machine. Underneath the domain, this is for step number 10. For step number 10, in the domain box, type local. Step number 11, confirm the override DNS checkbox is checked to match the worksheet entry, and then click Next to continue. Now to get to this, you're just going to have to scroll down just a little bit, confirm that the override DNS box is checked, and then click Next. Step number 12, Continue to configure the firewall using the entries you made in the worksheet during part 1 of the lab and click Next when prompted until you reach the Configure LAN Interface page. Some of the entries in the Setup Wizard requires you to type in the values from the worksheet into a text box, while others will require that the entry be selected from a drop-down list. So we're on the time server information. Let's go on over to our worksheet. Let's get the URL for the time server. I'm just going to go ahead and copy that, come back over, and from the window I'm going to select the first option that I have here that makes sense, which is number 2. I'm going to confirm that is correct by looking at my spreadsheet here, and it is. For the time zone, let's pull down the window and let's select UTC. Click Next. We next need to configure the WAN interface. On line 8 of our worksheet, underneath Physical Configuration for the WAN interface, we're going to have a static configuration using the IP address of 10.20.1.1 with a 24-bit subnet mask. We don't need to configure the MAC address right now, nor do we need to configure the MTU or the MSS, and we can confirm that by looking at the information that we have for our MTU and our MSS on our worksheet. So according to our worksheet, we're not going to modify the MTU or the MSS. Scroll on down. Here we have the IP address, and our IP address is 10.20.1.1. Subnet mask is 24. The upstream gateway, we don't have one. Let's go ahead and confirm by looking at our, and it says upstream gateway, none is required. Going back over to our configuration, DHCP hostname, none is required. PPPoE configuration, none is required. Point-to-point transfer protocol configuration, none is required. Now we come on down here to the RFC 1918 networks. Let's see what our worksheet says. Do not block. So we leave this box unchecked. What about block Bogan networks? Let's go ahead and check our worksheet. Bogan networks do not block. So we got to uncheck this box right here. Once you have everything in there correctly, go ahead and click Next. We're now ready to move on with configuring the LAN interface. So let's look at our worksheet here. The LAN IP is none. So that means we're going to be picking up DHCP. Step number 15. At the Configure the LAN Interface page, click Next to accept the default entries and proceed to the Set Admin Web GUI Password page. Step number 16. On the Set Admin Web GUI Password page, type the new password as it is shown. Capital P, ampersand, SS, 9999. Now, you can go ahead and show the password over here to make sure that you're doing it correctly. Capital P, ampersand, lowercase ss, 9999. Type that in one more time down here. Ampersand, ss, 9999. Go ahead and look over the password one more time, and I'm missing a 9. If you fat finger the password during this step, you will have to do the lab from the beginning. So make sure you check yourself. Go ahead and click Next when you're ready. Step number 18. When prompted by the pfSense Firewall Setup Wizard, click Reload to save the changes to the pfSense Firewall. And now just get ready to troubleshoot for the next day and a half while you figure out why people don't have access to the internet and they can't get their email. pfSense is a software firewall, meaning that it sits on top of the operating system. So if this can be hacked, then they get access directly to your operating system. This is why it's always better to use a hardware device for a firewall, such as a Cisco ASA or some other type of hardware firewall. Step number 19. From the pfSense menu bar, click Firewall and select Rules to configure the firewall with the rules you defined in part 1 of this lab. I've clicked on Firewall. Let's go on down to Rules. By default, with a firewall, all ports are blocked out of the box. So if you do not configure any rules in your firewall, then all 65,535 ports are blocked. The difference between a firewall and a proxy. Out of the box, a proxy server has all ports opened. You must go in and close the ports that you don't want to use. On a firewall, it's the opposite. All ports are closed. You have to go in and create rules to open up certain ports that you want to allow users to have access to. Step number 20, at the Firewall Rules WAN page, click the LAN link to begin adding the new rules that you configured in part 1 of this lab. Here's the LAN. Let's open that up. So this lab is configured with 3 default rules. Normally you wouldn't see these except for the second one here for the default allow LAN to any rule. That it would be set up so that when you drop the firewall onto the network, all the users would be able to have unimpeded access to the internet for anything they want to do. Number 21, on the rules table, click the default IP version 6 any rule and the default allow LAN to any rule checkboxes and click the red delete button at the bottom of the table. So we're going to delete this rule here, number 2, and we're going to delete the IP version 6 rule. Notice that you cannot delete the anti-lockout rule. When you have both those boxes checked, go ahead and press the delete button. Go ahead and confirm. Step number 23, when prompted, click the apply change buttons to apply the changes that you just made to the rule. Step number 24, below the firewall rules table, click the green add button to add a new rule. But before you do that, read the next paragraph. There are 2 add buttons, one with an up arrow that will add the new rule at the top of the table, and one with a down arrow that will add the new rule to the bottom of the table. Since the order of the rules dictates how the firewall will implement the rules, you will choose the second add button with the down arrow. So make sure you choose the right green down arrow button. Step number 25. Use the entries in the Firewall Rules worksheet of the pfSense Firewall Planner worksheet to create the HTTP rule. So the action is passed. Don't worry about disabling it. Now the interface for all these rules is going to be the LAN interface. It's going to be IP version 4. The protocol will be TCP. Source is any. Destination is any. The port range will be HTTP port 80. So let's pull down the list, and from the window we're going to select HTTP port 80. Notice that it fills in both of those windows for us, from and to. Scroll on down. Description. Just click in the window here, type in internet, and you're going to select from the window internet browsing. Go ahead and click save. You now have a new rule, but it will not take effect until we click where it says apply changes. Click apply changes. Step number 27. Repeat steps 24 through 26 for the remaining rules on the Firewall Rules worksheet. Again, let's click on the green button with the down arrow to add another firewall rule. Action will be pass. Interface will be LAN. Address family will be IP version 4. Protocol will be TCP. The source will be any. The destination will be any. And let's go ahead and bring up our worksheet to see which one is next. And this is going to be SMTP. Go ahead and pull down the destination port range. Scroll on down till you come to SMTP port 25. And notice that it fills it in for both of the windows from and to. Scroll on down. Underneath extra options in the description, type in SMTP mail. Go ahead and save. Apply changes. Next rule. Scroll on down. Click on the green add button with the down arrow. And we're now going to do FTP. Again, the action remains the same. Pass. The LAN interface, IP version 4. Protocol remains TCP. Source is any. The destination port range, pull down the window, and from here you're going to select FTP. port 21. Make sure it's in both windows. Scroll on down. In the description, file transfer will work just fine. Click the Save button, and on the next screen, just press Apply Changes. Scroll on down and make sure you got your new rule in place. Our next rule will be for DNS. Let's scroll on down. Once again, let's click on that down arrow for the green Add button. Again, everything applies. LAN, IP version 4, protocol TCP, source any, destination any. For destination port range, you're going to pull down the window and you're going to select DNS using port 53. Scroll on down. In the description, just type in DNS. Click Save. On the next screen, press the Apply Change button. The last rule we have to deal with is to allow ICMP, and that's going to be using the protocol ICMP. Again, we're going to scroll on down, find that Add button with the down arrow. Leave everything as it is, scroll on down, scroll on down. For the protocol, we're going to select ICMP. ICMP type is any. Source is any. Destination is any. Description, allow ICMP. Scroll on down, find the Save button. On the next screen, click the Apply Changes. And we are done with that. Now, for step number 28, make a screenshot showing your completed rules table and paste it into your lab report. So go ahead and make a screenshot. Step number 29, we've already clicked the Apply Change button for each one of the new rules we have created. So for step 30, close the pfSense window. And so that's going to conclude this short video presentation on how we go about completing the JB Learning Lab 03, configuring a pfSense firewall. You got questions, you got concerns, please don't hesitate to reach out, contact your instructor.